So you've got a microphone here, and you've got a compressor. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, every recording chain is really quite simple. It's always the same thing. You need something to capture whatever it is you're recording, the microphone, and that needs to be amplified. You go through a preamp, and the next trick is an EQ and a compressor, and that's really all there's to it. With vocals, I like to not EQ them too much, if at all.
Right.
Because I don't want to harm the vocal chain.
Well,
yet,
at this point,
you
you haven't EQ'd the guitar, really.
Not much. I mean, sometimes I do. Sometimes
Maybe a little bit. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
we went through the Focusrite thing over
Yeah.
there. But for the most part, you want to capture the sound. I mean, something that we didn't, that I think we don't always talk about with the guitar amp is that the amp is going to sound like that, maybe a little brighter, maybe a little darker, but that's the characteristic of the amp. So when we played that Plexi yesterday, if you go back and watch, we plugged in this very old style amp and turned it really loud and made it sound pretty good. I mean, I thought it sounded great.
It's a great amp.
It sounded like it's a great amp, and that's why it sounds good. So, but the bass is going to sound like the bass for the most part. You want pretty much the flat signal, and for the most part, with the guitar, you can probably, if there's an offensive thing, or if you want to make it sound creamier, you can sound that way. But you're not changing the tonality too much. It's the sound of the amp.
Yeah, unless you start plugging in pedals or
Right.
other effects, like
Which we can
delays
get
and
into. I think
distortion and stuff like that.
that's something we didn't talk about that much yesterday, but I think I'd like to reserve a hunk of time to talk about guitars and pedals and all that stuff and the other things we bring into the studio later on today. So if you have questions about that, I'm interested in answering those because I'd like to cover as much guitar stuff because I think about that stuff very much.
Sure.
But so microphone into preamp. I'm going to walk over here and I'm going to take a look at this stuff with you.
So basically what we have, and it's easy for us to say, just use the gear that you have if all the gear that you have is great or, is known to be great.
Yes.
But I don't know how much bad equipment is available anymore out there. You know what I mean? It's all like really good to a certain level. It's not necessarily amazingly amazing,
but it works.
But it's really not horrible. So you can't let that get in your way.
Right.
So what we have here is this lovely LA 610. It's got tubes in it. It's a wonderful unit. It's got a preamp and it's got a compressor. We're not using this section of this box.
The compressor.
Today. Yeah, the compressor. Not today, so we have it bypassed. Because my favorites for vocals are an 1176. And I double compress into an LA2A. The reason is the voice is kind of temperamental. Every voice is different, so you got to dial it in according to the singer that you have. But the idea is for the first compressor to get the main peaks, like anything that kind of shoots out of the voice that's kind of like way too loud,
right.
And dial that down a little bit. That's just to hone it in.
Right.
And then for the next compressor, and there can be other compressors, they don't have to be these two. Or for the next compressor, to just smooth out everything a little bit. So they do different jobs. It's not they're set differently. And the idea also is to not have one compressor work too hard because that can easily turn into just over compression and like a weird pumping thing. And, so you want to, like, one of them's more leveling out and the other one's more like dominating, like sudden peaks.
Right. Okay.
So that's what we have set up. Depending on your microphone, this is a condenser microphone. It's a very nice, lovely microphone.
It's a blue.
It's a blue.
Thing.
It's a Bluebird, actually. And in full
it
disclosure,
is a Bluebird.
I use those. I have those, and I'm friends with the guys at Blue. It doesn't really matter which mic it is, but if it's a condenser mic, you've got to put on the phantom power and start.
Can you explain what that means to the layperson?
They're dynamic mics. They don't need phantom power, and phantom power is a voltage that makes the mic operational because they have electronics inside them. And so this is basically, you could put a battery in there technically if you want.
The ones that don't need phantom power plug in somewhere.
Well,
or they don't need power at all.
They just don't need power.
I've
So-
plugged in mics before. I've had some with power. I have a tube mic.
Like a tube mic?
Yeah.
Sure. That's a tube, which is also a condenser mic, but it runs off a tube.
Okay.
And that needs extra power. The phantom power is not enough to supply. Basically, it's just an easier way to save batteries. I mean, technically speaking, and some microphones do operate on batteries. If you find some of those, you know.
But just to go from the signal chain again, so you've got microphone
into the preamp, and you'll have to make sure you have your phantom power on if it's a condenser mic.
Right.
If it's a dynamic or a tube mic, you won't have to because the dynamic don't need it. The tube supplies its own power, and I go from the preamp into the first compressor and the second compressor, and then into the box.
And do you always do a two compressor thing?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, okay. I don't set them very aggressively. I just want to control the peaks so I don't get any overs. Like if you over compress and you sing loudly, the vocal kind of goes away in the headphones, and singers don't like that at all.
Right.
So there's a comfort level of like, you know, the voice is a dynamic instrument, and if you can't hear it while you're singing, then you've got a problem.
Yes,
you know?
You must hear yourself. We'll get into that stuff later
Exactly.
But I remember as I was building my own studio, I think I asked your recommendation of what would be the ultimate thing I should get if I were to build my own studio. And I think you recommended it was a universal audio thing.
It was a box very much like this.
It was very similar to
this.
this.
It has a different compression setting.
Yeah, it's a different compressor. So it's a preamp on this side and a compressor on this side. So it's the Universal Audio 6176, and I use it for the bass. I use it for the voice. I pretty much keep it on a flat setting almost always, unless I've got a quiet instrument, then I have to like crank the pre a little bit more. But I set it and I leave it. You know?
Yeah, and it's actually this section and this compressor.
Right.
If this section was this compressor.
Right.
That's the difference here.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, once everything is set, if you have quieter sections or you do quieter vocals, you can just turn up the preamp and to the point where your compressors operate again like the way you had set them. And so this is really the only knob you'll have to end up touching, because you know when you do whisper tracks, you'll want to get all that.
Right.
That thing, all the gravel in the vocals.
All the airy, whisper, high pitchy kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, you do want to crank that stuff.
And so, but you have to be careful that you don't feed back in the headphones and hurt your ears if, don't want to do that.
That's right.
There's a pad on these preamps usually. And
what does the pad do? I don't even know what that does.
The pad just attenuates, like if you have like too much level coming from the microphone for the preamp. If it distorts, you would have to turn it down, and that's like an extra quick way to just turn everything down.
Just dims it a little bit.
Yeah, it's like
a dimmer.
Like a dimmer, if you will. Yeah.
Okay.
Then you have filters. You can roll off some high end or some low end.
Like a high pass, low pass thing.
So it's a good thing to do. Sometimes it tells you what frequency it is. Sometimes it doesn't. This one says low and high, so you can. It's kind of like a mini EQ, if you will. And that's about it for a preamp section. And then we go from the preamp into the first compressor, and I kind of set it up already for Brendan for the input or thresholds, depending on what compressor you have. Kind of determines how much compression you will get, or where it starts to kick in. So you have to experiment with that a little bit.
I experimented with plugins for a long time, like 2 to 1, this to that. I don't necessarily know what any of those numbers really mean, but I can hear that something compresses more, something compresses less, something flattens stuff out. Sometimes it compresses a little bit and releases a little bit,
Yeah. There's there's attacks and releases, which are pretty obvious, really. How quickly does it kick in when it finds that peak? Like, does it go immediately and tries to hammer it down, or lets it pass and starts compressing right afterwards? Depending on your instrument or voice or whatever, you'll want to set it like differently. But it's kind of hard to give like real guidelines of what that is, especially since the number 3 over here doesn't really relate to anything that like it relates on a different compressor.
I'll do something with my guitar pedal sometimes where between me and our guitar tech, just take a silver Sharpie and just put a mark where I like the thing turned and leave it there.
Yeah.
For the most part, come back to it if I want to, if I really feel experimental. But I don't like messing around with stuff too much. I don't want to sit there and go, oh, let's put everything back to 0 and start. Usually something's going to work for the most part. It's going to be the microphone and the personality of the singer. Sure. And then all this stuff is going to be,
If you're looking for crazy sounds, you have to, Like
yes,
if you want, I'm going to like experiment, and then you just plug in everything under the sun, and you just like come out 2 days later and wonder what happened to you.
Yeah.
Those are fun times, but that's not how you get things done.
Right.
Like that's a different.
You do that once in your life, and then you're like, okay, I'm never going to do that again. So what we're going to do, I think, is we're gonna get some level, we're gonna get some sound out of this thing. I'm not necessarily going to do any singing right now
because it is early.
Because it's early, and nobody wants to hear that really.
Yeah.
But what we're going to do is we're going to take the Galacticon song that we were talking about, and we're going to listen to the vocals. We're actually going to listen to actual music and see how vocals work with a song, and then we're going to listen to the arranging of the vocals, and we're going to listen to I can hear this in the room now, so you'll probably be getting some levels over here.
Yeah.
But we're gonna listen to the vocals, we're gonna listen to some arranging. Ulrich was talking earlier about whisper tracks, and what is a whisper track? It is basically whispering and doubling a track with a whisper, and that's an arranging technique through vocals. Doubling vocals is something that works. Sometimes tripling vocals, but I kind of stop at doubling because it's hard enough to match pitch with my flesh slide whistle that is my voice. It's very tricky, and you also have to be in, when you are singing, like Ulrich was saying, when you're singing, you do have to kind of be in shape because the throat is a muscle, and you're actually holding your throat up, you're holding this pitch up and down. You actually have to have muscles that are in good shape for that. So this is more of if I were to loudly, you can see that it's sticking around at the same place on the readout on the Pro Tools. Hello, and I don't know if I'm gonna get much louder than that in the booth, when recording. But do you have the delay?
Yeah, that's the other thing is effects for when you do vocals. Like various people have various demands or preferences. Like if you like to hear reverb or delay while you like on your voice, by all means put that on. Don't record it.
Use an insert or a plugin.
Use an insert, and you'll have yourself a much maybe an easier time hearing yourself.
Yes. That's cool.
That's a very short.
I consider myself the luckiest man. Let me see. So anyway, you'll hear an echo on my voice when it's up, but that is an important thing. You want to be comfortable. Like yesterday when I was recording my early guitar tracks, I put on some delay just because I don't want them to sound so naked. I wanted it to sound like.
You want to have some fun.
And also, you want to, as dry as everything's going to be when you record, you want a little life in it, because eventually you're going to be in the mixing part, which we're going to get to soon enough today. You're going to start putting the fun effects on, the things that give it life and a little bit of space and a little bit of girth and all that. So in this case, there's a little bit of delay and reverb if you want it.
Reverb, sometimes distortion. Some guys really like that too.
There's another thing that through TuneTrack, they have a thing called Easy Mix that I use all the time, and I end up using it in final printing of Metalocalypse TV, the songs. But it's Easy Mix, and it's this very quick. You can just dial in, you can just type in vocal, and a bunch of vocal presets come up. And I'm sure you'll talk about that more, presets versus constructing your own sounds, your own unique sounds. And there you go. Hello, hello, hello.
Can they hear that?
They can hear that? You can hear that?
I'm not sure how.
So maybe this sounds interesting. Maybe it doesn't. We can't hear if this sounds cool or stupid. Anyway, so Easy Mix. Here's Easy Mix 2, which I have to upload. Another thing I know about my Pro Tools rig is that I'm in like Pro Tools, not the most recent version of Pro Tools. I don't upgrade my Pro Tools. I don't upgrade any of my plugins because I don't want to deal with that stuff. Because it works. It's working. It works.
Things you're opening a can of worms, and really when you need to get things done, you don't want to deal with that because like I'm very slow to upgrade myself. Like
I don't do it.
I'm still running on ancient software almost at this point because it's working for me, and I can't take the chance of having downtime even for a day or two to like wait for new plugins because so and so hasn't updated their thing yet to work with the new this, and let somebody else figure it out. And then when everything's smooth, when they move to the next version, I'll upgrade to the previous one.
Right. Anyway, I agree. I don't like to upgrade. But this Easy Mix 2 here, you can see on if you move the cursor around to you can actually go to, like, if you go to the first category, drums, guitars, keyboards. What does that say?
Vocals.
Misc. Oh, misc. I thought it said miso, like the soup. That'd be cool. I wonder what that would sound like.
Miscellaneous.
Yeah. So you'll see, like, what I'll do, if you're really trying to get a very quick mix together or try to get something that you can hear while you're recording, I will use this sometimes just to get a flavor, a tone, something that's specific as opposed to just a dry vocal.
Sure, yeah.
But at the end of the day, you do have to listen to a dry vocal and see if you're in tune, see if you're in time. You have to just kind of figure all that stuff out. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, one of the most important things is being able to hear yourself in the studio. You know, these are pretty good headphones here, the Sennheisers. I think I may have something like this. But I was using, I think for Galacticon, I had a really crappy pair. Again, they're there, they work, and I'm gonna use them. But I had a crappy pair of just very mid-rangey speakers. And I had to do like a half thing where you see people do this in, like, you know, where they have one, and they're cupping their ear, and they're trying to hear the tone of the song they're singing to, so they have a key center, and they're also kind of cupping their ear so they can hear the actual tone of their own voice and isolate them between the hemispheres of the brain somehow. And I had a really difficult time in my booth, in my room, until I upgraded my headphones to have a little bit more kind of high fidelity, a little bit better, cleaner low end, cleaner high end, and better tone. So it's gonna make your singing a lot better. It's gonna make your pitch matching a lot better if you get a good pair of headphones. Now, do you have a headphone recommendation?
There's a couple of different ones. I used a Sony headphones, the studio standards, I think it's 7506s. Is that those work well?
I think that's what I have because I probably asked you.
Yeah, those work well for a lot of people.
Those are about $100, right?
Yeah, they're not terribly expensive, but they work pretty well. They're a little high-endy, and actually Blue just came out with a whole new approach to headphones with those MoFis that sound a lot more linear. They're less hyped, like they sound really nice, and you can really hear what's going on. And they take some getting used to, but they're extremely comfortable. They're almost like a weird space alien contraption.
Right.
They look really cool too.
Whatever I had before, it was almost the equivalent to like old NS10s, the mid-rangey kind of like show all your mistakes studio monitors. But I couldn't hear, and it was a high mid, and I couldn't hear a good warm medium note tone. Sure. But it changed my singing. It really did. My ability to hear myself, to hear the track, and to hear my voice in relation to the track changed my performance a great deal, and I had to do less pitch correcting, or I also added to that. I probably got a little bit better with my technique as I continued singing. And another thing for singing, I watch all the YouTube how-tos on breath control, on singing, on getting pitch, on trying to warm up properly and all that stuff. And then I talk to singers often. I talk to metal singers often too about how to not destroy your voice when screaming, when belting out the guttural kind of death metal stuff too. And I've learned a lot about that. We can get into that if you guys have questions later on. But that's just stuff that I learned on the road talking to other metal singers that we would tour with, and like, how do you preserve your voice? How do you do this? How do you do that? But in the studio, all bets are off. You're trying not to blow your voice out in the first take, but at some point you're trying to give it your best take when you can, and you may have a few in you, and you may not be able to do that much more of that. So you got to do all your clean vocals earlier and do your screamy stuff later on. That's what I've learned.
You got to learn to pace yourself.
Exactly, you got to pace yourself, and then a lot of microphone techniques in the studio for closer, breathier kind of sounds. I realize I don't have to get that loud to sing some things, and then some, in this song that we're going to hear, there are some screamy, belt-out, guttural things, and some very, very close mic, quiet things too that we're going to hear in one section. So we're going to show you a lot of that stuff, I think, unless we have anything else to talk about as far as the technique of miking and hearing yourself and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to reiterate that it's just so important to make the singer comfortable
It really
with his
is.
listening environment.
Absolutely.
You know, that's just such a huge thing. So take the time to make a good rough mix or a headphone mix, and if that has to be different from what you're listening to in the control room, you know, it's very important to just like come up with the good rough headphone mix and build on that as the singer requests, and it might be a very strange thing to listen to for you, but if it works for him or her to get the best vocals done, then that's what you do. It's always, at the end of the day, it's always, what do I have to do to get the best performance out of whoever's playing, you know?
Yeah, well, you know what? When you play live, the mix is everything. Your monitor mix. So we're on in-ears with Death Clock when we play live, and it's really important for Gene Hoglan because he's got a click track that's running a gigantic, like, movie theater size production of the animation that has to be completely synced up with what we're doing, because we cut the music to a certain tempo, and we're going to play at that exact tempo, so every downbeat coincides with a cut. So if we have strobing, there are double kicks, and we're telling story, and we've got to be completely on beat. And the end result ends up being something very interesting, and there's a good synergy between band and visual, because we play with this LCD screen, this huge thing. And so Gene's got to hear himself perfectly. He's just got to, he has a click track and maybe a couple of we have like a couple keyboard stings that happen on the front of house that play out, that are pre-recorded, that we play along with too. So I know as a singer, as a guitarist, I have to hear my guitar very well. I have to hear certain parts of the songs. If I'm singing and playing guitar at the same time, I can get a little bit lost. If we have like a lot of the thrashy, upbeat snare kind of stuff, I can get completely turned around and warped. So I have the guy feed me the click track too at that point. And then I need to hear a little bit of Mike Keneally's guitar if we're harmonizing and bending, just so we have a very smooth, you know, completely together bend. And then I need to hear a little bit of Brian Beller's bass tone so I can match pitch too, because if he's playing in a certain place. If I am singing, if we're doing the Doomstar Requiem stuff live, which we did recently. So you know that as a musician, that is the most important thing, is being able to hear certain things. It's not the most musical mix all the time. It's kind of ridiculous if you isolate it. Like each of our isolated tracks are just ridiculous. Brian Beller listens to his bass and it sounds like a tinny, plucky thing, but he needs to hear that top end and that attack to make sure he's in sync with everything.
Absolutely.
So take the time always as a musician, that if you do have a monitor check, if you're lucky enough to do a line, not just a line check, but a monitor check, always take the time to get your stuff together, because that's the difference between a great performance and a comfortable performance, and you don't know where one is, you know?
Yeah.
That happens. You can get turned around and everyone's shrugging, and then you train wreck a song, and the most embarrassing thing in the world. It's also kind of funny.